Welcome back, everybody, to the Aurora Show. And we're going to do the second part of the First Contact summer series. So in the first part, I kind of talked about like what my feelings were for the summer and why it's giving me first contact energy, right? And kind of the history and astrology of more modern times, right? Modern times where we've had increased UFO reporting, what the astrology was like. We talked a little bit about like there were times where it was more like reported orbs in the sky, and sometimes there was crashes, and then there was like abductions, and it's all very, very interesting, right? A few things that I wanted to mention before we get into the second part, which is going to be talking about June, right? Is just some updates that I have seen other channelers posting that really add on to what I'm talking about. So Alexander Quinn, if you guys know him or follow him in any way, he put out a little video like a day or two ago talking about this. And he basically said, I'm just going to read a little excerpt from his video where he said, you have already noticed this even just this week, but from now until the end of August, things are going to feel as though they are accelerating from 100 miles an hour to 1,000 miles an hour energetically. A lot is about to shift. I don't want anyone to panic if they are feeling the level of acceleration in their lives and aren't quite sure how to process it. What is coming is not doom, quite the opposite. It is exciting, but it is going to move very quickly, and I think it's important that we talk about this. He said this wave is already beginning to build, and unlike many of the other shorter energetic phases we have experienced, this one is set to continue through, carrying us towards the end of August, all in one go. So I did watch his video, and he basically said the same thing that I'm feeling, right? He's like, what used to take years is now going to take months. And what used to take months is now going to maybe take days, right? To either come to manifestation, to be revealed, right? And his point was the same thing that I've been feeling, which is that we've done so much energetic work, right? And for years, especially during Neptune and Pisces, right? A lot of the work was purely energetic. We were working on this spiritual level, right? I talked about we were kind of going up, right? We were trying to like merge dimensions this way, and we were working in a very like non-tangible way. And then at a certain point, and I talked about this last month, there would be a convergence point. Right. And right now, as I'm describing it, right, and I've been describing it as I used to see the merge happening this way, and now the merge is starting to happen this way. So meaning the future and the past are converging into one. He does talk about that as well. He says basically time is speeding up. It's not an illusion. This is what we're feeling. Right. And so when time starts to speed up, the future comes into the present much more quickly. I think the past is also bleeding into the present to be like healed and resolved, right? And so the energy, the energetic templates and the physical are now converging. And he even said, he goes, the physical cannot hold out any longer. It has to start manifesting and showing what has been worked on energetically, what has already shifted in the upper dimensions, if you will, needs to start happening physically. And so this is why we're feeling the way we are. And this leads me to talking about June, which, so when I was channeling this information and really just, it's coming over and over again about the first contact summer, it was shown to me that there was kind of three themes to the summer. So the first one is June, obviously, and this would be the decloaking phase. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. July would be the actual first contact. And again, we're talking about contacting the future self, the future civilization, the future galactics, right? Like it's existing this way horizontally. And that August would be the solar flash. And again, I'm going to talk about all of these themes in a way that I think makes it very practical and ways to embody and work with this energy. I am not going to be talking about decloaking ships from the sky. I know back in the day there was a ton of information about the solar flash and how it would just be this massive solar flare or flash of light, and then boom, we'd all be in New Earth, right? I never vibed with that simply because I know what it takes to go through this ascension process. I know the grit that it takes to make it through these transformations. And if it was that easy, we would have done it a long time ago. Okay. If we could just have a flash of light and poof, we're all in New Earth and we're all healed and we're fucking kumbaya, we would have done it a long time ago. Okay. That is not how this is going to work. That is not how the ascension process is going to happen. So we need to reframe, I think, these ideas. But June being decloaking, again, Alexander Quinn touched on this exactly as I would have, when he said that a lot is going to be revealed, that basically false identities, masks, ego, conditionings, programmings, like all of this would be seen. It would all be very visible, very obvious. And this is what I've been talking about with the theme of decloaking specifically, is that decloaking, again, I don't pretend to know everything that goes on. Could we have ships decloak in the sky? Sure. I'm not disregarding that that could happen. I'm just saying we have spent a long time kind of sitting around waiting for these things, for these events to happen. And the truth of the matter is that it is and will always be an inside job first. Okay, so we have to stop externalizing. We have to stop waiting for a savior and for an event outside of us. We have to realize that we are the event. We are the decloak. We are the first contact. We are the solar flash. And until we really understand that and start actually embodying that, we're not going to make space for these external events, right? And so that is what the theme of decloaking means to me. Okay, and I think I touched on this in one of my in my June first waivers report, which was, it's the mask coming off. It's the true authentic self coming out. So we're going to have, I think, a little bit of a twofold energy here. For one, you're going to see the light decloak. And I'm talking about this on a practical, embodied human level, right? You're going to see people's true authentic selves come out. We're going to suddenly see the light within others that maybe has been hidden and obscured, right? Maybe has been distorted because we have been projecting onto those people, right? I know a lot of first waivers feel that way. We've spent a lot of time being projected on, being blamed, being judged, being seen through the lens of the ego, rather than people seeing us through the eyes of the heart, right? And when you're looking through the lens of the ego, all you're going to see outside of you is your ego. So everything outside of you that you don't like is a reflection of your programming. And so the light is going to be decloaked in many ways. I think we're going to start seeing a beautiful kind of renaissance of people's true authentic selves, of people's light really shining out into the world. But we're also going to see the opposite, right? We might, in many ways, see people's, and I don't want to, this isn't for us to walk around and label people as good and bad, right? That is duality. We're trying to, transcend that. So it's not for us to walk around and be like, oh, well, they're good and they're bad. And, I'm seeing this person's true colors. And so this is who they really are. No. But we might see people's egos decloaked that have been very well hidden, that have been cloaked, right? And so you're probably going to see this on the world stage first, because those are the most obvious examples. Like you will see a lot of masks come down. There will be a lot of truth revealed, because that is what decloaking really means, right? To decloak is to take off the cloak. So it's to reveal something. It's to see something that was previously hidden. It was to see something that was previously veiled, right? You couldn't quite see it clearly. That is what decloaking is. And so we're going to see a little bit of a twofold there, where I think we're going to have a lot of compassion this month. There's a lot of Cancer energy, so we really have to stay in the heart and I think really hold space for the fact that people are going to be uncomfortable, okay? And even for those who have done the inner work, right? Like who have really kind of worked on their embodiment and, embodying higher frequencies, embodying their true self. It's uncomfortable for us too, because even for those people, there's still a lot of pieces of self that are very maybe authentic, right? But have been wounded. And there's parts of ourselves that we've had to kind of hide along the way due to operating in this world of ego, right? And so it's uncomfortable for everybody. It's going to be uncomfortable for the true authentic self to come out. Even in the rawness and in the woundedness of that. And then it's going to be uncomfortable to see some people's true colors really being revealed. And again, true colors isn't their real nature, but it is the programming and it is the conditioning and it is the trauma and the wounding that they have been hiding, that they have been suppressing. And so suddenly everything's out on the table. And so that can be very uncomfortable. Lauren Gorgo, who Hope and I read her a lot, she put out a little update the other day that was also really interesting, I think, to this theme, where she talked about the first fruits, like the first fruits blossoming, right? The first fruits coming into harvest. And she said the first fruits refers to the first wave, right? So that's the first wavers, the initial harvest of the embodied Christ humanity, which means that the monad group, and when she speaks about monad, she's talking about oversoul groups, right? We are individual souls, but we're also then part of oversoul groups, right? Soul families, if you will. And then the one oversoul would be source, right? So she said the monad group, so our soul group, the planetary anchors and ascension guides who upheld the Bodhisattva clause, I think it's like a peace clause, I'm not sure, to withhold their physical embodiment until it became available to all of humanity, will finally be permitted to move on from the sacrificial stabilization into active participation. Note that first waivers are not abandoning the collective, but they are no longer required to defer embodiment indefinitely to hold the corridor open. And again, I think that leads to decloaking, right? What she's saying is that there was certain ascension protocols in place where basically it was not safe. Okay, it was not totally safe. If you were moving rapidly into a high frequency, if you were really doing the work to embody a God self, what we have to realize is embodying a God self on a planet of density and egos makes you look insane, because you're no longer operating in this mind system. So you're going to look so crazy. You're going to operate in a way that nobody understands, right? And the ego is designed to target love, is to target higher frequencies. That is the way it's designed. Okay. It's like having a virus detector on your computer, right? It is designed to target certain things that it detects as a virus. And the ego was designed to detect unconditional love, higher frequencies as a virus, and to go after it. Okay, because that's the only way this planet, this grid system we have stays intact, is if we're all in low frequencies. It's the only way it works. And so what she's saying is that a lot of first waivers were kind of prevented from stepping into full embodiment because we were trying to hold the stabilization and the anchoring for the rest of the collective as they start to work through the energy, as they start to raise their frequency. And now what she's saying is we no longer have to defer the embodiment. Okay, so now it's like That's what the full speed ahead energy is. And I think that's another reason why we're experiencing what we're experiencing, where everything feels like it's happening all at once, very quickly, very fast. And you're seeing some people really take off in terms of like a positive direction and a quantum leap. And then you're seeing other people really struggle or hit a wall. And none of this is good or bad. No one's better, right? It's just that we're in real time seeing whether or not the work we've been doing is manifesting in the highest way. And if it's not, then it's showing us where we haven't transformed something, where we haven't really resolved something, okay, where we really haven't healed something. And so it's reflecting that to us. But the embodiment is faster. And we're no longer, like she said, having to be sacrificial stabilizers. We're no longer having to do all the dirty work, if you will, to kind of wait for everything to catch up. Now it's like full speed ahead. Everything's going to have to keep up with the first wavers or with the energy at large, right? So June is a really interesting moment. Like today is the 6/6 portal. And the 6 energy is very feminine. And the 6 is very kind of, in numerology, it's very much about like family, community, right? The 6 is equal energy exchange. It's synergy. It's where things are, you're giving and receiving. It's ebbing and flowing. And there's a lot of like synergy to it. And this is where it tends to manifest in family, community, right? There's a sense of working together. There's a sense of balance. There's a sense of harmony there. But the 6 is also related to matter. And the word mat anciently was the word for the mother. So matter comes from the word mat, which is mother. And matter is feminine. Shocking. And we were always told the opposite. We were told that feminine energy is more kind of like obscure and abstract and ethereal and emotional, and that masculine energy is physical. And it's actually the opposite. Matter is feminine. And we live on a matter-based planet. We're very unique in that way. Earth is a matter-based planet. And so this is why we call it Mother Earth. We don't call it Father Earth. There's a reason for that. And so what's happened is we've been living obviously totally inversed. And so we've been living in a hyper-masculine grid, a hyper-masculine system. And it has been causing friction and tension with the natural grid of this planet, the natural blueprint of this planet, which is feminine. And so again, these things are converging now to where we have to understand these things in a very new way. And so I think the 6/6 portal today is bringing in the feminine energy. It is going to reharmonize our relationship with matter, with the earth, with our bodies, with what is physical, with this human experience, which is meant to actually be very enjoyable. And so this portal, I think, is going, again, because it's matter, is going to be bringing a lot of things into manifestation very, very quickly, okay? So this leads through the month of this theme that is about decloaking. It's about things becoming physical. We finally see something we couldn't see before. Okay, something finally comes into manifestation that we've been working on for years. All of a sudden, everything is manifesting. And we're working in a new system, and it is very odd. You know, I had this thought the other day where I was like, it's my nervous system is having to adjust, and probably your guys's too, especially with Uranus and Gemini. And if you have major Gemini placements, we're feeling this a bit more maybe than others. But I had this moment of knowing my nervous system was freaking out because so many things were happening at once. So many things seemed to be manifesting at once. Whereas, you know, I'm very used to the previous grids where everything took a very long time. And you couldn't always look to the external experience to give you any insight, because often there was a huge lag between what you were working on internally or energetically or spiritually, and there was a long lag before anything would change in the physical. And now that lag and that gap is very small, and so the nervous system can freak out a little bit with this because it's not used to this, right? It would be like all of a sudden, if we're used to a 24-hour day, right? We're used to getting 24 hours in a day, so our nervous system is aligned for that, right? We're aligned to have, however many hours of sleep your body calls for, but you have this certain rhythm, this certain flow to a 24-hour day, right? Maybe I sleep for this long, I go to work for this long, I do these other things for this long, and so the nervous system is very used to that. Now imagine if all of a sudden we were like, you know what, there's only 7 hours in a day. That's it. It's 7 hours in a day. So all of a sudden we're like, holy shit, I can only sleep for an hour because then I have to go get this work done for 2 or 3 hours. And then I have to do this and this is going to take an hour. All of a sudden we're doing so many things at once. Everything feels like it's happening super, super fast, all because we've perception wise are saying, oh, well, now there's only 7 hours in a day. That's what it feels like right now. And so the nervous system does have to adjust to this, right? Now, Mercury is in Cancer for this entire month, and we will have an extended retrograde, an extended stay with Mercury in Cancer due to the retrograde that's going to happen at the end of the month. So Mercury in Cancer, right? Cancer's the womb. So we often associate Cancer with the home and the family. We associate it with our lineage, right? Where we come from. That's a whole nother interesting conversation because, in this patriarchal paradigm, right, we talk about bloodlines, and they often have to do with the father, taking the father's last name, having the father's bloodline. But in reality, and as science is just revealing what we've already known, actually in ancient times before patriarchy was installed, everything passed down through the matriarchal line. Property, money, titles, etc. And that was because you don't have to prove maternity, but you couldn't prove paternity. That wasn't a thing, right? Everybody knew who the mother was there, but nobody really was interested or was looking at who the father was, right? So there was a completely different system. Which of course led to the installation of patriarchy. And then of course, because they wanted to take over the rulership of land and property and titles and all of these things, that is where the whole purity culture comes from, because the only way to prove paternity then was if you could be absolutely sure that the woman was a virgin before she mated, right? That was the only way to prove paternity. So it leads us to a lot of interesting things. But when we talk about Cancer and lineage, it is actually the mother line that shows the lineage. Why? Because all of the mitochondria in your body, and the mitochondria are essential for bodily function, and they give the actual instructions to the DNA. Okay? It is quite literally the code of your DNA. Only gets passed down from the mother. You don't receive mitochondria from the father. So in essence, only when you have daughters does the DNA pass on. That's a whole nother topic, but again, very interesting to think about. So we have Mercury in Cancer this entire month. Right now, we also have Jupiter at the critical degrees of Cancer. We also have Venus in Cancer, okay? And these two are coming up into a conjunction, Venus and Jupiter. They're going to be exact, I think, around the 10th. And of course, in ancient astrology, these were the two benefics. Okay, they were the planets of blessings and love and gifts and all of these things. So, in modern astrology, I think we need to be a little bit more nuanced in our interpretations. Jupiter isn't always good. She's not always handing out blessings, okay? But it is still a very lovely conjunction to have, but it is happening in Cancer while Mercury is in Cancer as well. So because these two are meeting up in Cancer, I think there's going to be this moment of where we are having some sort of activation or some sort of remembrance. That's what I think about with Cancer, is it's the energy of remembrance. So there's a remembrance of where you've come from, right? It's a remembrance of your origins. And so I think in many ways, this is part of the decloak, right? Because you have to remember where you've come from if you're going to know where you're going. And so there might be a lot of things about the past, again, that I feel bleed into this month and the decloaking. There could be a lot of things revealed, right? And so that's going to happen around the 10th. Now, on the 12th, we have Uranus squaring the nodes exactly at 2 degrees, which is a Taurus degree, which rules matter. And whenever Uranus is involved, it's a wild card energy, right? And so Uranus squaring the nodes, there's kind of twists of fate here. The North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, both squaring Uranus in Gemini. So around the 12th, which, is next weekend, again, there's just going to be a lot happening all at once. And next week feels very fated to me. Okay, it's about fate, it's about prophecy, it's about the oracles, it's about destiny. And so, you can never really predict how this is going to go down. But again, we have to be open to whatever happens. Again, the decloaking energy, things coming into manifestation, things being seen, things being realized that we didn't anticipate, or it's happening faster than we anticipated. So I think nervous system regulation is going to be really key this month. And again, holding compassion, I think, and holding space. That's a lot of where the Cancer energy helps us, is holding space for what is revealed. Being able to nurture and be compassionate about how difficult this is going to be for everybody, but also training our nervous systems to be okay with everything happening all at once, and with fate and destiny coming into play, and with plot twists happening, and with multiple avenues happening. Remember, Uranus and Gemini. Gemini is the twins. Uranus does, I think, really well in Gemini. It's Gemini can carry Uranus's electrical energy very well. And because Gemini is the sign of the twins, and Gemini has, historically is about lots of options, lots of avenues, lots of ideas, right? And so with Uranus squaring the nodes here, I think there's going to be multiple avenues that open up, multiple options, multiple fated events, multiple synchronicities. Like there's just going to be all of a sudden this corridor that opens that's like, oh my God, there's so many opportunities, there's so many avenues, there's so many ideas, there's so many options. And again, this is where, the North Node in Pisces, there is a sense that we can choose how we move forward in this. A lot of blessings might be revealed next week. And it gives me like the vision of the 7 of Cups card in the tarot, is like, there might be many blessings, right? Again, a lot of the work that you've done for many, many years might suddenly come into fruition. And we get to decide what resonates for us. We get to decide which direction we want moving forward. We can play around with a lot of ideas, but either way, this is going to be a huge part of the decloak energy as well. Everything is fast. Everything is happening all at once. And we have to be very solid within ourselves, right? Chiron is at the critical degrees of Aries all month, finalizing our test. Now, Chiron will go back into Aries from September to April, but hopefully by then we're in the embodied phase with Chiron. We've done this for 8 years now with Chiron and Aries, but right now he's at the critical degrees. And I think it really is testing us of like, even if you're afraid, can you do it anyway? Can you claim yourself? Can you be confident in yourself? Can you realize that you are the sauce? You are the God self, right? And to take those leaps of faith and to claim your sense of self and to move forward in a fearless, confident way, right? Now, next weekend, Venus will also enter Leo. So right after the conjunction with Jupiter, she heads into Leo, and we start getting more of the decloak energy, right? The moon and Cancer are very much about the internal world, right? The ancestry, the lineage, the inner world, the emotions, the feelings, the the oceans and tides that run within us, right? And then Leo, ruled by the sun, is the external expression of that inner self. And this is why Cancer and Leo, ruled by the luminaries, have a lot to do with self-expression. So Venus enters Leo, suddenly the authentic selves start to come out. Now, again, this is where you'll start to see the split. You'll see a lot of authentic light being brought forth. People just embracing who they are and not judging or shaming themselves anymore, and just really kind of letting their light out. And then, of course, you're going to see a lot of ego coming out as well. But I do think this is going to be it's just going to be a really great transit. I love Venus and Leo. And then we have a new moon in Gemini the next day. And that is going to set us on a very new course, right? In this nature of Gemini, it's at 24 degrees. That is a Pisces degree. Again, it's giving me the 7 of Cups in tarot. It's like we have to dream. We have to use our imagination for the positive. There might be, because there's so much going on at once, there might be some confusion. There might be like, I don't know which way to go. There's too many options. And I think this new moon is going to really help us really get integrated with our nervous system so that we can actually make confident decisions, right? And that we can operate a little bit as the eye of the storm within the chaos. That we're not going to get too overwhelmed by all the activity, by the fast pace, but that we can actually stay centered within the chaos. And remember that there's no right or wrong choice. I think it's, for me, it's like there's no right or wrong choice. It's about whatever you decide, do it decisively. That's it. Just do it decisively, because the universe can organize around that. What it can't organize around is second guessing, doubt, fear, procrastination. It can't do anything with those energies. And that new moon in Gemini will also be happening in Gene Key 12, which we did activate last month, which is called the final trial of humanity in the Gene Key book. And it really is about, Richard Rudd talks about it being about vanity, like thinking all about yourself, basically, and thinking that you are an individual, which we are, but we aren't, right? But the interesting part that he talks about in that shadow is actually that vanity, he says, comes down to believing that if you come from the heart, you will lose all of your power. And so in order to not lose our power, we go into vanity, which is the ego, which is where we mask. It's where we hide. It's where we suppress. It's where we create. Vanity, right, is really about creating an external persona that's not true to the inside. And that's what this month is all about. And so I think that new moon in Gemini is going to, again, just the themes of this month will keep accelerating as we go through these transits. And then from the 15th to the 18th, we will have Chiron sitting at the very, very critical degrees and seconds of Aries. He will be moving into Taurus on June 19th, late on the 19th, and we are starting an entirely new healing cycle, okay? Now, Chiron and Taurus, I did a whole separate video about Chiron and Taurus, if you want to watch that. But a lot of wounds around scarcity, a lot of wounds around our physical bodies, the earth, resources. What is stability? What are our bodies worth? What is our time worth? What is our effort and our labor worth? I think that's a lot of the wounds of Chiron and Taurus. Of course, it's going to bring up a lot. It's going to be squaring Pluto and Aquarius basically the entire time that it's there for 4 months. So, of course, you're going to see a lot of increased conversations around costs and inflation and wages and, equality in wealth distribution. And there's going to be all these conversations. I think there's going to be more tension between human labor and technology, right? And AI labor, and all of these things are going to increase. But another thing is, remember, Taurus is about physicality. Taurus is matter. And so there's also going to be, I think, on the theme of decloaking, there might be a lot of wounds brought up when suddenly all the stuff that's been going on in the background, behind the veil, if you will, gets manifested. That's going to hurt for some people. And for others, it might not. right? For others, it could be finally like the blessings come in, right? But I think as a collective, because Chiron is it's a collective energy, there's going to be this sudden wound where we're facing in real time, in physical manifestation, what we have created energetically. And we're going to have those questions of like, is this sustainable? How do we fix this? How do we heal this? I think we're also going to start to see more wounds manifest physically in the earth, right? It's actually going to really pull back the veil and show us what we have been doing to the earth. And in our bodies, what have we been doing to our bodies, right? And all of this is going to be a decloak. It's going to be a moment of realization, right? So there's a lot to talk about with that, but I did do a whole video on Chiron and Taurus. And that leads us right into the summer solstice, which is the 21st. And this is where, the light quotient really tips. We'll be celebrating Cancer season. So again, the theme around where we come from, the mother, the family, the community, the lineage, the ancestry, the heritage, right? And this will be especially important for the United States, who has quite a lot of Cancer energy. And then we get to the end of June and we kind of have a boom, boom, boom at the very end of June. So we have Mars, who will exit Taurus on the 28th and enter Gemini. And this is where the energy really takes off, because Mars and Taurus has been very grounding for us. It has slowed us down quite a bit over the last month. And that was necessary because we came off the back of 7 planets in Aries in April, and I think we were all fried. And so Mars and Taurus has really slowed us down, grounded us in. All this Cancer energy is also saying like, hey guys, we've got to take care of our bodies and our emotions along the way. Yes, everything is fast right now, but if we don't tune in and make sure we are actively integrating and rooted in the body and in our emotional body as well, if we're not actively reconnecting, right, with everything closest to us, everything that we love, if we're not actively connecting back to the heart, we are going to get lost in this whirlwind, right? But when Mars enters Gemini, it will immediately conjunct Uranus, and that to me is like, it's off to the races. This is why July is going to be an even kind of more intense month than June, but we are starting the decloak process here. Now, the very next day on the 29th, we have a full moon in Capricorn on the same day that Mercury goes retrograde in Cancer. So Mercury will go retrograde on the 29th, and it will be retrograde until July 23rd. And then it will stay in Cancer until August 9th. It's a long time. And so again, I feel with this, right, if Cancer is the mother, the ancestry, the womb, it's where we've come from. But remember, Cancer being the womb is also how we birth something new. So to me, Cancer is a portal. It opens us up to the past and the future. Now, with Mercury in Cancer the whole month, again, my feeling was we're going to get a lot of maybe guidance, downloads, information streaming through from our origins, okay? From where we come from, which is the mother, source, our lineage, our heritage, our oversoul, right? And then when Mercury goes retrograde under the full moon in Capricorn, to me, I'm looking at this in a different way now. When the reversal happens, to me, that's when the messages from the future start coming in, which leads into July of the month of first contact. That's just my feeling. That's my theory. And the fact that it's happening under the full moon in Capricorn, right? They're going to be opposing one another. So if Cancer can sometimes be the past and the family and the heritage, Capricorn is the legacy. It's what we're building to then leave to the future children, to the future generations. So full moon in Capricorn, Mercury stationing direct on that day, I think we're pulling straight from the future. What is the legacy we are building? What are we here to build that is going to lead us into the future, right? In the most productive way possible. Because right now, if we are able to receive insight from our future selves, we can maybe quantum leap and make decisions that ultimately change the timeline for the higher. Like there's just a lot packed in there, but that is going to be a kind of intense full moon there. And then of course June 30th, the big shebang of June, Jupiter enters Leo. And this really finalizes this theme of decloak here, because Jupiter in Leo is about, remember, Jupiter's big. Okay, she's the biggest planet. So when she enters a sign, there's a huge magnifying glass here. So again, this is the cherry on the sundae. We will have Jupiter here for 13 months. All of a sudden, it's about sharing the authentic self. It's about going big or going home. It's about letting the light out, but you'll also see the ego, because the shadow of Leo is the ego. Not just that Leo itself is ego and no other sign, but I just mean the shadow of Leo, even in ancient astrology, was called the ego. It's the very false, performative based ego. And so you'll see a lot of that, but you'll also see a huge amount of light and authenticity being uncovered and unveiled. And I think this is actually going to be a really great summer. I'm not saying it's not intense and there's not a lot going on, but I think it's going to be a great summer. And for Jupiter to enter Leo right on that last day, just cherry on the sundae, right? And then of course Jupiter, and the reason that I think Jupiter in Leo will be perfect is, yes, because you might have a really kind of over dramatized egos coming out. But remember that Jupiter in Leo will be opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So that means constant ego checks, constant. And so the ego will be tamed, if you will. So that's the month of June. The decloaking is here. There is a lot to move through this month. But again, I think this summer is going to be fucking fantastic. I think that this is the moment we've been waiting for a long time. And now that it's finally here, we just have to be open to embracing it. And we just have to move with it. So love you guys. And I will be back for the First Contact Summer Series Part 3.